So, let's recap a little bit. Interproximal reduction is very useful in making the space you need to solve crowding. And it's safe to use. But make sure not to make too much of it, or you will end up with remaining diastemas at the end of the treatment. You can, however, plan to use power chain overcorrection aligners in every treatment, so that if you have some remaining spaces, they will just close up without any need for a refinement. But isn't there a way to precisely calculate the amount of IPR that we make? So we can just do the right amount of IPR and avoid problems? Yes, there is. You need to use an interproximal gauge, which is no more and no less than a kit of graduated gauges which have different thicknesses. For example, if you need to make a 0.2 mm of interproximal reduction between two lower incisors, you can just use your stripe or your burrs to remove some enamel between those two teeth, and then try to fit the 0.2 mm gauge into that interproximal contact. If it fits, you've done it right. If it doesn't fit, just remove some more enamel and then try again, until the 0.2 mm gauge perfectly fits the 0.2 mm space you have made by removing the interproximal enamel. Cool, isn't it? Alright, we're almost done with this section. Just one more thing which is, essential. Remember the case we've just seen? Well, let's see it again. This is the starting point. We have the crowding, which we decide to solve with interproximal reduction. At aligner number 1, we are scheduled to make the IPR between lower central and lower lateral, and between lower lateral and lower canine. So we take our burrs and remove 0.2 mm of enamel from each interproximal contacts, which means we remove 0.1 mm of enamel on the distal side of the lower central and 0.1 mm on the mesial side of the lower lateral. At this point, when we try our 0.2 mm gauge, it fits in between those teeth. We do the same between the other two teeth. Now, as there is no or little crowding between these teeth, the amount of enamel we remove will result in an equal space created between the teeth, in which the gauge can fit in. But when at aligner number 4 we need to make interproximal reduction again, we face with a different situation. Between lower lateral and central incisor is okay, there is no crowding, we make the IPR and the gauge fits as it should. But between the two central incisors, we have some misalignments. Which means that even if we remove 0.1 mm on each tooth side, the gauge might just not fit anyway in between those teeth. So we might be tricked to think we didn't do enough IPR. So we make some more, which is exactly what happened, until the 0.2 mm gauge fits in. But of course, in reality, we have removed more than 0.2 mm of enamel on that interproximal contact. So this is what we expected. And this is the actual result. Well then, the gauge thing doesn't work all the time. When there is a lot of crowding, there is no assurance it will work out as it should. But there's something we can do to make it work all the time. Take a look at this case. Here, the lower incisors are very crowded. We plan interproximal reduction to solve the crowding, but the crowding wouldn't allow proper access for the gauge to measure the amount of IPR we make. Also, let's say you wouldn't have a good access to the interproximal contacts to make a proper IPR. It would be very hard to pass a burst and remove the enamel right just on the interproximal contacts with that crowding. So, as you follow the video, you can see how the incisors are first proclined to allow alignment. Now that you have a good alignment and, consequently, a good access to pass the burrs and a good access to measure how much enamel you have removed, you can safely make the interproximal reduction. After you make the interproximal reduction, the teeth are reclined again to close the space you have made through IPR. This sequential combination of alignment, interproximal reduction and retroclination is called round tripping. Invisalign automatically proposes you round tripping when it thinks you don't have proper access to the interproximal contacts to make a good interproximal reduction. And sometimes that is true. It is very hard to make a good smooth interproximal reduction on very crowded teeth, as the strips or the burrs can't properly access the mesial and distal surfaces of the teeth. In that case, you first need to procline the teeth a bit, and as they procline, alignment will get better, giving you a better chance to get a good access to interproximal contacts. But there's not such a thing as a free lunch. In fact, the downside of this technique is that it makes you lose a lot of time. I mean, teeth need first to be aligned to proclination. Then you have to make the interproximal reduction you need. And then the teeth are retracted again to close the small diastemas you have created with IPR. Also, round tripping can cause periodontal suffering in specific conditions, as the teeth are proclined a lot and we may lose some cortical vestibular bone. So, it's true that round tripping gives you a better access to interproximal contacts, but just try not to use it when you think you can properly access them without it. It will save you a lot of treatment time. Thus, Parper rule number 6 tells us IPR is a very important tool we have, but we have to use it the smart way. First, you should choose a good instrument to make interproximal reduction. Second, you should be able to access the interproximal contacts properly. Then, you should be able to measure how much interproximal reduction you actually make with a gauge. And finally, you should always use 3 final power chain overcorrection aligners to make sure that even if you have made a bit too much of IPR, there won't be any diastemas left at the end of the treatment. Oh, and just one last thing. Don't even think of making less IPR than indicated. If you do that, teeth simply just won't move, Just a quick example. Here is the initial situation. And here is the supposed outcome after making the IPR and finishing alignment. But after 14 aligners and not making enough IPR, this is what we get. So be precise in doing your IPR.